So we'll get started on the Google Forms session. What I want to do is just kind of go through showing you, so basically by the end of this session you should be able to create a form, edit a form, and be able to share it with others so that they can fill it out and you can get their data back. Have any of you used forms up to this point? Stacey, how have you been using them?
I have a feedback page on my website.
Okay. Okay. So you're using it to get feedback from people who are involved with the PeopleSoft project. And has anybody else been using it yet? No? Okay. So really, so that's a good example because it really is meant to be more of a one-way flow of information. It really isn't. You can share the results with people who have filled out the form, but it can be tricky for them to see specifically what they submitted to you. So really you're asking people questions, they fill out their data, it can be anonymous or you can collect who it is that sends the results. And then really it's meant for you then to take that data, it comes in a spreadsheet, and then you do whatever you need to do with it. So really it is kind of that one-way flow of information. Okay, so to start to make a form, so last week we talked about Google Drive and we looked at docs and sheets and slides. Really forms could have been a part of that because it is part of your Google Drive account. So when you've logged into Google, if you happen to be in Mail or happen to be in Calendar, to get to Drive, you can always use these 9 little squares. That always gets you to your apps. I'm already in Drive. I already have that up on the screen, but if you are in another one, if you're in Mail or Calendar, you can just click on Drive and it will take you to where you need to be. So I am going to go into a folder just so I can put all my stuff in there. So to create a form, now if you're still in the old version of Drive, you will just go to this Create button. If you have updated your Drive, and I think we talked about that last week, there is that you can go into your settings and experience the new Drive if you want to. I think it's still kind of in the beta stage of testing, so that's why you can go back and forth between it. I bet eventually they are going to move that you won't be able to go back to the old version, so you may want to try it out just so that you're kind of comfortable with it, familiar with it before it becomes a permanent feature. I'm not sure, I haven't heard when that's going to happen. Maybe it will always be available, you can go back and forth, but since they have it, I wouldn't be surprised if eventually they do push us that way. So if you're in the new Drive, this button says New. If you're in the old Drive, it says Create. But it does the same thing. So we'll go to this Create button, and then you just pick Form. And if it happens to be in a shared folder, it'll ask you, are you sure, so that everybody else can see this. That's okay. And then you start at this point. So just like with all of your Drive, your docs, your sheets, your slides, anything that you make, I always suggest that you start right up here at the top and give it the name of the file. Because if you don't name it in your Drive, you're going to see all these untitled forms, untitled sheets, untitled docs, and it will make multiple, like you might have 3 different Word documents going on, and if you don't name them, it's just going to call them all untitled, untitled, untitled. It won't prompt you that, oh, you already have an untitled document in here. So it's just a good habit, get right off the top, you can name it. So we'll just call this Form Thursday. You will see then, when I name it up here, it automatically then names the form down here. That is what your participants will see. So when you give out this form, they aren't going to see the name of the file up here at the top. They're going to see it here. So if you wanted to slightly modify it, maybe you want them to just see test form, you didn't want them to know that it was for the Thursday session or whatever, you can just change that and this will stay whatever you called it. So if you wanted to give the participants a slightly different name of it, you wanted to file it under a different name, you can go back and forth and change them. But if you do initially, for the first time, name it up here, it defaults and gives it the same name there. Okay. So there's 2 main places, and we'll go back and forth between these when you're first setting up your form. Editing the questions is where it defaults and starts off, is where you basically create and edit the questions that you want to ask the people in your form. The theme is how you want to make it look. So let's look at the theme first, and then we'll come back and do all the questions. So the theme is basically what you want your form to look like. Do you want some color? Do you want some pictures? Do you want different fonts, different sizes? All those sorts of things. So there are some defaults here on the side. that you can pick from. So there's basic, at the fair, beach evening, birthday cats, cars and trucks. So if you want to pick something that maybe has something to do with your form, if you just want to have a little bit of fun with it, you can pick the different pictures. You can change the picture if you want to, because once you pick one of these, so let's say I pick this one. So within these, they have built in some fonts, some colors, the picture that goes with it, but you're like, well, maybe I don't really like the color that this font is going to be. Maybe I want my questions to be a different color. I don't really like that red. You can then, once you've picked the basic theme, if there's some things you want to tinker with, you can then below each one, like once you select it, then there's this customize button. When you select the customize button, then you can change the header image if you wanted to. You could change the font. So if I click on title, then I can see I can change the font. I can change if I bold it, the size, the color, the justification of it. I can change the description, all those, the same things in my description, the questions, help text options. I can change the background, all of those things. So if you like the way the form is, you don't even have to customize it if you don't want to, but that's a new feature that just came out in the last couple weeks, is that you now can pick a theme and then actually fine-tune it exactly the way that you want it. So that can, if you want to do that first, and you don't have to do it in any particular order. If you decided you wanted to do all your questions first and then go in and pick the theme, you can do that, or you can do the theme first and go back and work on the questions. It doesn't really matter. But you will see, so this, let's say I've picked this is one I've decided to use. When I then go back to edit the questions, the picture disappears. It's still part of my form, but it's two different, I work on two different things at two different times. I either pick the theme and work on that, or I work on the questions. So don't worry, it's still there. It still remembers what you've picked. It just only shows just the basic question text when you go back to edit the questions. So you can just toggle back and forth between those as you want to edit them. Okay, so the first thing that you should do when you are making your form is decide kind of what are those basic settings that you want to use with your form. Do you want it to be only people in Olds College or within Campus Alberta Central to use the form? So are they required to have that login to be able to even view it, to be able to do it? If there's a chance that there are people who don't have Olds College Google accounts, or maybe aren't on devices that they might not be logged into that, even if they have an Olds College account, if they're on a phone or on an iPad that might not be logged into their Google account, you might then want to uncheck that. It's going to confirm that with you. Are you okay with this, that you've opened this up to the public? You can say yes, that's okay. If you are doing anything with students, we've been suggesting that if it's just a quick kind of a form, a quick survey, some anonymous data, to uncheck this, because then it would speed up the process. If students had to come into class, log into Google, do the form, it just adds that extra step. If you want it to be really quick and fast, you might want to uncheck that. But if you do want to keep track of who is filling out the form, you do have to require the login, and then you can collect the usernames.
I noticed on the form, it has this form created by internally college,
right,
whatever. Is that just something that's plugged in there, or can you do that?
It might be, that might be an automatic thing. That because it's within the domain. That you'll have to show me where that is, because I don't think there's.
On the lower screen when you were looking at the
Oh, okay. Okay, then that might be something that's just built in, and I don't know how much we can play around with that. Yeah. Okay, so if you do want to collect who actually fills this form out, then there is the automatically collect the usernames. You may want to let your respondents know that it's not an anonymous form. If you uncheck this, then it would be anonymous. It wouldn't track who has filled it out. So if it's something that you need to know, like who's coming to an event, what food does somebody want, what kinds of equipment does somebody need, then you probably do want to have their name, because you need to match it up with with the information that you're collecting. If you automatically collected their username, then you wouldn't have to worry about adding in a question of what is your name. So, but again, if there is a chance that they may not be logged in within our domain, then you probably, you can't then automatically collect it, and then you would just want to add a question that is, please provide your name down here at the bottom. If you're having multiple pages, if it's going to be quite a few pages long, you can show how far people are in their form, filling out the form. If it was maybe a multi-page survey, you could show a progress bar to show how much like percentage of it they've completed. If you want, like if it's the kind of a response, especially working with students, if you only want them to fill it out once, if it's something that you're marking, if it's an attendance thing, a participation thing, you really only want them to do it once, then you can allow one response per person, but they have to have Google accounts. If they are, it doesn't track it by IP address or anything like that, it tracks it by how they've logged in with their Google account. So again, if there's a chance that somebody hasn't or isn't using a Google account, you've sent this out to a public address, then it really can't track or it really can't limit those people to one. They could probably do it multiple times. Olds College people could only do it once. And then you could also shuffle the questions around if you wanted to. Again, if you're using it as an assignment or an activity where you wouldn't want students to be cheating off each other, if they're maybe using it in a computer lab, then you can have the questions all shuffle it around. So there's lots of options. You can pick lots of different combinations with this. I think if you yeah, so as soon as I uncheck, if I try to do automatically collect respondents' username, it automatically checks that they have to log in at the same time. So there's kind of some options that have to go together.
Does it track the order? You know, like I was thinking of, there's that old adage about where your name sits on a ballot sheet.
Right.
Does it relate the question order to your responses or anything? Does it track that? You know, if an answer order seems to affect the next questions that
you can build that into your questions. So you can build it in so that if somebody asks a certain question, if they respond in a certain way, then it will jump them to, like, you can have kind of branching questions in your form, but really when it tracks it, it only is basically collecting whatever they click, whatever option they click, whatever text they add in, and then it will also automatically, it doesn't show it up here in the form settings, but it will also give the time and the date stamp that they submitted it. So it will, and that's the way it defaults orders it, is that the first one goes in first, and then as it receives them, it just plunks them into order. But yeah, you can then, within the form, do some direction pointing of, if you answer it this way, it goes this way. If you answer it this way, it goes that way. Yeah. Okay, so once you've decided what kind of the settings that you want to use in your form, then down here is where you get into the questions. So it defaults with, it gives you multiple choice as the default option with your questions. The question title is where you would type in the actual, it's kind of deceiving. It's not so much the title, it's the actual question. What is the text? So you might ask something like, what is the weather like today? And help text might be something that maybe a little bit of a prompt, maybe some suggestions, something to maybe give a little bit more detail, some clarification to the question. And if you go into the theme, it's probably going to be like a smaller sized font, maybe in italics, maybe a little bit different color. So it will be a little bit different text. Then the question type, you can do multiple choice. Then here is where it says go to page based on answer. So then if I check this off, it's then I can then decide if they pick option 1, it can go to the next page, or as I build more pages, it would give me more options of where I could send people to do the questions. So there's multiple choice. So there's a variety of options. Text and paragraph text is where they just type in their answer. Text is a little bit shorter. Paragraph text just makes a bigger box for them to type more. I'm not sure exactly what the character count is, but you will see, I'll do a few examples just so that you can see what this looks like, but a text answer is a little bit shorter. And I think, yeah, so you can just kind of get an idea. This is the size of the box for paragraph text. This is the size of the box they get when it's text. Multiple choice, just like it sounds, they get choices. They have to, but they can only pick one option. So it's either A or B or C or D or however many things that you give them. If you want them to pick more than one, like so maybe they can pick a variety, pick the answers that are most applicable to them. Maybe they can pick 2, 3, 4. Then you would pick checkboxes. With checkboxes, you can go in, there's advanced settings, you can turn on data validation, and let's say you had 5 things and they had to pick 3. They had to pick their top 3. This happened yesterday. There was an instructor who wanted to, they're building there's an industry advisory council meeting coming up in the School of Business. They want to send 3 students from this class to be on this industry advisory committee meeting. So he asked the students, vote for your top 3 students of who you want to go to the meeting. So we put in all of their names and we did this data validation where we did select exactly 3 names. So if they only picked 2 and hit submit, it would have said, no, you have to pick 3. It forces them to actually pick 3 choices. So there's some options you can do in there. Select exactly, at least, at most. So you can kind of play around with that a little bit. So there usually are these advanced settings with most of these question types. So once you pick it, if you want to go into the advanced settings and just kind of see what some of your options are, you can. Choose from a list. It gives you a drop-down menu, but again, you can only pick one thing. So choose from a list and multiple choice are very similar. It just changes the look or the format of the kind of question. A scale would be if you wanted to rank one thing from like 0 to 5. A grid would be ranking it, but you can do multiple things. And I'll show you an example of this. I'll pull up a survey or a form that I've done that has some of these question types. And then date and time. Date is if maybe you're asking people on what day did you attend the session, or what day did you go on holidays, or whatever question you're asking them. They can then actually pick it right off the calendar. They don't have to type it in. Everybody's answers then would all come in the same format. Same with the time. What time did you phone in to ask for help? What time do you need to book the room for? You could then click time, and then they would actually pick it right off of then it comes in the same format. People aren't typing it in different ways. So those ones you probably wouldn't use a whole lot. It's probably more if you're booking something. If you're using your form as a room booking thing, then you could probably use that. But I haven't really seen them used a lot.
This isn't a potential for finding a date and time for a meeting.
Oh, it could be. Yeah. Yeah, that could be actually a perfect one. So you could poll people and say, what would be the best day for you to attend a meeting? What would be the best time for you to come? And they could just pick it right off of there. Or you could just ask them, if you're not picky about the format, like if it's day, month, year, or if they type it in, or they can spell out October, or they put 10, or then you could just pick text. But if you wanted it specifically, everybody's answers to all come back the same way, you could pick date, and then it would all be the same format.
So when they use the term Google poll, that's not this.
It could be. I haven't ever seen a Google poll before. It could very well just be a form that someone's created that just has a quick survey. They're just using it as a survey tool. So I have never seen a separate app called poll. Maybe there is. Like, there's lots of extensions and things that you can get and add into your Chrome, so perhaps there is a separate thing, but yeah, we'll have to check into that. Okay, so I'm just going to create a few questions. So we'll leave this as multiple choice. And we'll do sunny, windy, hot, cold. If you then don't need, you can always X that out. We don't need all those, so we can do those ones. Then I'm going to add another item. Let's say we do and I'm going to leave this one as a text one. The advanced settings for text are really that they would have to include certain text. They would have to include a certain number. It would be kind of looking for kind of specific answers that if they don't put that in, it may prompt them to say, no, you need to put a number in your answer, or you need to type in. If there is a question that they have to answer, then let me just turn that off. You can make it a required question by clicking in that little box. So when I hit done, you'll see that this one now has a little red, very small, but there's a little red asterisk beside the question mark. That then means that question, they have to answer it. And then I'm going to do one more. I'm just going to do another text one. What is your name? And I'll make that a required question too. done. All right, but then I'm like, well, it probably would have made more sense if I had the name first. I want to move that. You'll see that as you hover over each question, it kind of makes it a little bit gray, so you can kind of see them individually. There's a question there, a question there, a question there. There's also the arrows with the two, like the four pointing in all directions. If you click and hold on a question, so with this one I want to highlight, I want to move that one. If I click and hold and then drag it, it then picks it up, and then I can move it. I want to put it right there. I can then drop it in. Maybe there's a question that I don't really need anymore, like, I didn't need to ask that. Again, if you hover over it, you'll see these three little options pop up. If I needed to edit a question, I can click on that. It will then open it up and I can change the text. Maybe this is a question that I want to ask a very similar question. I just need to change a few little words in it. I don't want to retype the whole thing. I can duplicate it and then go in and edit it and just change the few little things I do. And if I completely need to get rid of it, I can delete it. So those three options, though, don't pop up until you actually hover over. So you'll see they disappear and reappear as I move from question to question. You can also add in, if you want to do a section header, so perhaps you want to add a heading to kind of break up your form a little bit. So they're kind of basically sub-headings that you can put in, so maybe some text to kind of go along with it to explain what kinds of questions you're asking. If you want to do page breaks, so that you want to break up your form so that if they answer question 1 a certain way, they go to page 2. If they answer it another way, they go to page 3. So you can decide if you want to do it that way. If you want to give them some pictures, maybe they have to look at a picture and then answer some questions about it, and same thing with a video. You can do that as well. The videos are best if they're YouTube videos. If you just put in the link right to the URL to the YouTube video, you can put that in too. So you don't have to have just questions. You can add in images and videos and things like that as well. All right, there's one other little tip I want to show you with the multiple choice. So if for whatever reason you have information in a document, so I have a list of all these names, and maybe I have a question where maybe it was a class project and I needed to know who was it that you worked on with this project. If I have the list either as basically like this, where it's individual lines, everybody's name is on a line, or they're all in a different cell in a spreadsheet, if I copy and paste all of this, so it can be names, it can be items, it can be things that you would be asking them about, whatever it is. If you had lots of things, you didn't want to retype it, you didn't want to cut and paste each one individually, there's a little trick you can do. So I am going to copy this, and I'm going to go back into here. If I just go into option 1 and paste it in, it recognized that each one of those items was on an individual line. It automatically made each one a separate option. So it's a really quick and easy way. I didn't have to copy Jim, paste it in. Copy Bob, paste it in. I didn't have to go back and forth and do each one individually. You can do them all as a group. So if you have a spreadsheet with some of that information that needs to go into a form, or it's already in a document, you can just do that. So I thought that was a pretty neat little trick to pass along. So then when I'm done that question, I just hit done, and then I can keep adding questions if I want to. All right, so that kind of gives me an idea. So there's my questions. I have a text one, I have a multiple choice, another text, another multiple choice. I am just going to pull up another form from yesterday just to show you an example of what the grid one looks like. So here, that rubric one right here, this would be an example. Oops. Come back here. This would be an example of the grid. So you can see where it's still ranking 1 through 5, but you're asking a multiple set of items. A scale would be if you just were asking the purpose from 1 to 5, clarity from 1 to 5, ranking, or what's your preference. But if you had lots of things that you wanted to rank all on the same scale, then you could do it as a grid. So that's how it looks. So. Good point. So the question was, is it better, like, is 1 the best? Is 5 the best? When you're doing this, it would be a good idea, because if I go into edit it, I can say specifically, I can say, is this 1 or is this an A? I can decide how I want it to go, the columns across the top. So I probably should go 1, and then say is the worst, up to 5 being the best. So you should give a little bit of clarification so that people know, is this a scale from 1 to 5 or 5 to 1? Like what direction does this go? Hit done, and then now if I just scroll back up a bit so you can see, then now it gives a little bit more clarification. So that is a good thing to keep in mind, yes, when you are doing scale questions, to make sure you say what your extremes are. What is the bottom? What is the top? Okay. It's going to close some of these extra tabs.
I'll modify the number from 1 to 5.
Yes.
2 more.
Yes. I just picked 5, but you could have 1 to 10, you could have 1 to 2 if you wanted to, yeah. And you don't even have to have numbers, like you could just have good, very good, excellent, or like poor, good, very, like you could, whatever you want. I use numbers, but you could use word descriptors if you wanted to, yeah. Okay, so we've built our form, we've made our settings, and we've put in our questions, we've done our theme. The last thing then is, how do you want to tell people that they finished it off? So the confirmation page is after they've done their questions, they've hit submit. This is a screen that then pops up to say, we've received your answers, thank you for this. So the default is just your response has been recorded. If this is something that they're doing where you may want to say something like, thanks for your time, this will be used or whatever, like if you want to give them a little bit of information on why did they need to fill this out, it's going to be useful to you, thank you for doing this, I appreciate your time. You might want to add a little bit to it. I think that your response has been recorded, it's kind of impersonal. I think you might want to add a little bit more to it. If this is a form where they can fill it out multiple times, you can give them a link to say, please go back and do it again. If it's information that this is what I needed to collect for today, tomorrow your answers might be different. So it's okay, you can go back again and do it tomorrow if you want to. You can publish and show them the results. It only gives a summary of the results, and it doesn't show that person A said this, person B said this, person C said this. It just shows a general summary, and I'll show you what that's going to look like here in a minute. And then they can go back in and edit their responses after they submit it. Chances are you probably don't want them to be changing if it's information that you need to know. Like, there may be reasons, but I haven't seen a lot of examples of where you would want them to go back in. And if you wanted new information, it's probably best if they just went in and redid the form rather than editing their existing. But if there's a chance that you're not really sure yet exactly how many people are coming, you're not sure exactly which day they need to attend, then maybe you can let them fill out the form and then go back in later and change it. So that's up to you. Okay, so once they've done the quiz or you've set it all up, then you can go up here to view live form and you can then have a look and see what it looks like. I would suggest that you do this, and especially try it on different devices. If they are going to be doing it on a phone, if they might be doing it on an iPad, computers, laptops, maybe get a few different devices, try this out so that it looks like this, so you can check the formatting and make sure it actually works. It should. We haven't really run into any problems, but it's always a good idea to double check it. So here's what I can see. The options I have for my questions looks pretty good. So this down here, this form was created inside of Olds College. Is that what you were talking about? Yeah, I don't think we can change that. I think it shows then that it was part of the Olds College domain. So yours would then say probably Campus Alberta Central. You'll have to check and see. Yeah. Okay. So then it does open it up as a new tab. I can then edit it within this, or I can just close this tab and go back to the one that I had. I'm just going to actually just add in, I'm going to edit this. And then in multiple choice, you can also do where they can add in their own answer if they want to. So if the 4 choices aren't applicable, they could say, you could do an other, and they could type in whatever they want. So I'll do that just to go back in and edit it. There, so now I have other, you can just type your answer right in. All right, so I'm good with this. I'm ready to send it out. So there's 2 places you can send the form. There's the send form button down here, or there's one up here in the top corner. There's usually a button up here in most documents that share or send or somehow give it out to everybody. It's usually in the same place on most documents. So I'm going to click on that. Then there's a variety of ways now I can get this form out to people, for people to actually fill it out. I can take this link and I can copy it. So it's telling me Control-C and copy this. I could then take this and paste this. It's a big long link with a really big long complicated code. I could just paste that into an email. I could paste that into a Moodle site. I could paste it into an existing website, or I could highlight the text, make it so that I could link to it instead, or I can shorten the URL. So it does build this in, but you're going to find, I find it's still not super short. It's still goo.gl/forms/G1QIZN2K. If you were asking your participants like I did, I gave you the link because I didn't know who was coming. We've had different people coming every single time. I couldn't email this out to you because I didn't ask you to sign up. You just showed up. So I just wanted you something quick and easy for you to type in. So if you're doing maybe a workshop or a seminar at the beginning of the session, if you want people to check in, you probably want something quick and easy. Or if you're doing a very quick survey in class, you might just want to have something that people can pick up their phones, enter it in really quick. So this does have the short URL function. What I would suggest doing, though, to make it even shorter, Control-C, I'm going to copy that. I'm going to open a new tab, and I'm just going to search for URL shorteners. You're going to get a whole bunch of different websites that can do this for you. So there's the Google one, and that's the one I've been using just because, and I picked it just because we're doing Google sessions. I've been using the Google shortener. But there's Bitly, there's TinyURL, there's Owly, there's a whole bunch of different websites that can do this for you. I'll just pick the Google one. I'm going to paste this big long send form email or the website into that, the address, and when I click shorten URL, the new one is now goo.gl/ and be careful with your uppercase and lowercase. So CDBW4. So I think you would agree that's at least a little bit shorter. We have been playing around. There are some that do make it a little bit shorter than others if you want to try a few. And it should last forever as long as you have, like you haven't deleted it out of your Google shortener page. And maybe eventually they're going to run out of all these possible combinations of letters and numbers. Maybe they'll just always get a little bit longer. You can't always have them this short. Take advantage of it now. On the URL, the Google page, it will show you some analytics. So I did this one yesterday, and I can see that 5 people clicked and used, or there was 5 clicks. I don't know if it was one person clicking on it 5 times or if it was 5 different people. I can't tell that, but at least I know it was used 5 times. So you can kind of get an idea of how much your link is being used if you want to. There's probably analytics built into the other shorteners as well, but I just noticed that one with the Google one. All right, so you can send it out that way. If you are sending this out through your Google Plus page, if you have followers, perhaps you have a circle of people in Google Plus that you want to fill out this form, you can send it that way. If you have a Facebook group that you want to fill out, if you have some people following you on Twitter that you want to fill out this form. I know one instructor has used Twitter. He's built a Twitter account just for his class, and he's been sending out Google Forms through Twitter. So it's a form that you just have to be careful with Twitter, is that it would go out to anybody that follows you. So if it's a form that you wouldn't want just random people filling out, then you might not want to try Twitter. But if it's an account where only the people in it, you can make private Twitter accounts that you can then only allow certain people to join it, to follow you, then you can send it out that way. You can then also email it to people. So you can just type in names. So maybe I want to send this to Stacy, and I want to send this to Bev in our department. You can just type in names, or I'm just going to delete these out. The nice thing about this is that it's all your Google account. Even though we're not logged in, I'm not really in Mail right now, it still is going to remember my contacts. If I've made up a group in my contact list, I can type this in, My EPC group, I made this one up. It had 5 people in it. I click on it, it automatically populates with those names that were in that group. So if you know you're always sending it to the same kind of core group of people, make that group in your contact list, go back into your email and do that there. Then in here, you can just type in the name of the group and it automatically populates in all their names. If you are sending it by email, I would suggest, it defaults to include the form in the email, I would suggest unchecking that. What it does is in the email itself, it will then actually give text boxes, it gives all the little radio buttons they can click on, but because it's within an email, we're sometimes finding the results don't come back as well as they should. If you unclick this, then all they're going to get is an email saying, you have been invited to complete the form, please click on this link. It will then take them out of their email, open up a brand new tab that's just the form. So it's not, I think you can run into a few more glitches when it's a form within an email. If you uncheck that, it just takes you to a brand new tab page and it's just the form itself. If you want to get a copy just so that you can confirm and see what it looks like. Now the only thing with this that we've discovered is that it doesn't track it in your sent mail. So you really can't go back into your sent mail to see who you sent this form to. Once it's gone, it doesn't seem like there's a way to kind of, oh, did I send it to this person? Didn't I send it to this person? I'm going to have to play around with that a bit to see how you can go back and track the history of who you've sent this to. But right now it looks like it's it doesn't record it in your email. If you need to know exactly who it was that you sent it to, maybe the better way to do it then is copy the link or shorten it up, then go into your email and then just send an email. Then you would just paste the link in, and then it would be recorded in your sent mail. So, okay. So, and then the option down here, looking to invite other editors to this form, collaborators, those would be people who could actually edit the questions. So maybe there's a project, there's a group of you working on this, you want to share it with others so that they can add questions, they can edit the questions. Maybe you've done kind of the first draft and you want to send it out for others to actually be able to edit it. Then those people are called collaborators. So then they would basically be sharing it with them, is what that would be. All right, so any questions on that? So there's lots of ways you can send it out, lots of options depending on how you want to track it.
I guess one question I have is, do we need to have the weight statement in these?
It probably wouldn't hurt if you think there is anything that could possibly be FOIP related, some personal private information. Henry Charnota would probably be the best one to talk to. So I think you would be able to, like in the form description, you could add in some text there to say that little legal blurb that they give you when you need to include anything about FOIP information. So that you could just paste and copy and paste that into there. Yeah. All right, so then before you send this out, one last thing that's a good thing to do is as soon as you create a form, it automatically makes a spreadsheet to collect the data. If I go back into, so this was called test form for Thursday, when I go back into my drive, I'll see there's automatically a spreadsheet that's called test form for Thursday responses. And I know it's a spreadsheet if I hover over that little icon, because it's the green with the white grid inside, I know that's a spreadsheet. This is the resulting spreadsheet of how this looks. So the timestamp, what is the weather like? So you'll see it's a little bit, it's not quite the same order, because as soon as I make a question, it automatically made the same column in the spreadsheet. If I then drag a question and put it in a different order, the spreadsheet isn't going to match that. So if you don't like this, it's like, well, I want to make it, I've made some changes, I don't want this in this way anymore. What you would need to do then is delete this one. I'm going to remove it. Come on. There we go. I moved that to the trash. I'm going to go back into my form. Oh, spreadsheet. I want the form. And then I'm going to go into responses and I'm going to change response destination. I want to make a new spreadsheet. You can also ask it to make a new tab in an existing spreadsheet. So maybe you have a spreadsheet that has multiple tabs along the bottom. Maybe it's a big project. You want to have all of it in one place. You can then say, no, I want to put this in an existing spreadsheet, just make it as a new tab along the bottom. You would pick this one, you would go choose, and then it would say which spreadsheet. Then it's going to ask you which spreadsheet you want to put this in. I don't want that. I want it to go into a new one. I'm going to create it. Now when I go back into my drive, I might have to refresh this. Google's being a little slow today. Test form for Thursday. There. Now it matches. What is your name? What is the weather like? What session are you in? Who did you work with on this project? So if it really the best way is to just delete out if you don't like if you want the order to match exactly. But since it is a spreadsheet, you could just drag the columns around and move it around. But if it's a lot of work to make it fit, just delete out the one that automatically was formed and just make a new one, and then it will match the order of the questions. So okay, so I have my spreadsheet. I have my questions. Now let's collect some data. So I would appreciate if you could go to that. So if you could open a new tab up here across the top, and if you could quickly just go to goo.gl/ so it's uppercase CDB, lowercase w, g, uppercase G, 4. And make sure you do it in the address bar across the top. Don't search for it in the Google search. You need to do it up across the top. I just want to collect some data so then you can see what it looks like. Nope, you can only, so that's what the multiple choice. So you can only pick one option. So now when I go back to this form, as I'm watching you fill it in, it's live. I can see, oh, it was 2, now it's 3. Maybe we'll get a few more. So you can actually see as people fill this in, you can just toggle back and forth between your spreadsheet, or within your form itself, if I didn't happen to have the spreadsheet open, oh, now there's 4. There's 2 ways I can do this. If I just click View Responses, it just pulls up the spreadsheet. There we go. Or up here in the Responses, View Responses is the spreadsheet, and I know that because it has the little icon beside it. If I click on Summary of Responses, it's going to show me just, so it gives me, there's some names, and it's going to graph it. So when it is multiple choice questions like this, there was only one option you could pick, so it just shows everything. It graphed it, made a little pie graph for me. There you had to pick the names. It also shows me what day everybody filled this out. So I got 6 responses today. If you had it open over a period of time, you might see the graph. So it kind of gives you an idea, do people fill this out as soon as you send it? Does it take a couple days? What's their priority of getting this done? So you can kind of get an idea of that. So if you decided in your form to send the link at the end so that they could review the summary of results, this is what they would see. So it's not tracking who it is that filled these out. I just know, because I asked you this question up here, but I can't tell what things Stacy picked and what things Noelle picked. I just know that they filled it out because they put their name up here, but I don't know what choices is theirs down here in that part. So there still is a little bit of anonymity. In here it doesn't, but when I go into my actual spreadsheet, if anybody typed anything in the other, then it was in here. So Foggy, I think, was yeah, Foggy, and they weren't choices. So yeah, it doesn't really flag that these were specifically the other typed in text. Like it doesn't say that was D, or it doesn't highlight it in some way. So I guess you just kind of have to remember what were the 4 options, and then, oh, those were the ones people typed in. Yeah. Okay, so, and there's a few other things in the responses. You can look at a summary, you can view the responses, you can change where the responses are going. If you want to shut your form off and make it done so nobody else can work on it, if you click on that accepting responses, it now says this form has been turned off. And then this is if anybody tried to go in, and if you tried to go to this website, this is now the message that you would get, is this form is no longer accepting responses, try contacting the owner. I can then go back in here, and then it turns it back on. So you can decide when it becomes live if you want to. There's a few other, if you want to clear out everything, you can delete all the responses and start over if you want to. Now, one last thing in the spreadsheet, and this is kind of a weird place where it is, you can get notifications that people have filled out the form. So when at the end of today, I will send out a feedback form just asking you which session did you go to, do you have any comments, did you learn anything? I get notifications that that has been filled out. To do that, though, you have to go into the spreadsheet part. You can't do it from the form. You go into the spreadsheet, you go into Tools, and then there's this Notification Rules. Then from there, you can notify you at your address when any changes are made, somebody submits a form. So any changes are made would be if other collaborators make a change to a question, you might want to get notified that someone has done that, or if just a person has filled out the form. And then do you want to get emailed just at the, I got an email this morning at 5 o'clock. It had 5 o'clock a.m. on it that people had filled out the form from yesterday. So just a one time of day it sends it out, or if you want to get emailed every time somebody fills out your form, it would be right away. So I guess depending on how many people you've asked, if you've asked hundreds of people to fill this out, you might just want to get the email once a day. If you need to know, like Mike Wehrman is building a form to do like bookings of if you need AV equipment or if you need projectors and things like that for a session, he might want you fill out the form saying where you want them and what equipment you need. He probably wants to know that right away. He wouldn't want to wait until tomorrow at 5 o'clock in the morning to find out you needed something yesterday. So depending on what kinds of data you're collecting, it might depend on then if you want it right away or just once a day. It's up to you. And you don't have to get notifications if you don't want to. If you plan on checking this, if you think you'll remember to check your form, your spreadsheet, you can just leave it. But I kind of like getting those notifications. But I just wanted to point that out because it is in an odd place. You have to go into the spreadsheet. The responses themselves, it's not a setting within the form. It's within the spreadsheet. And then once your data is collected, you can then do whatever you want with it. It's a spreadsheet. It's Google. Yesterday we did have a form that an instructor sent out. He didn't quite like the way that it had collected the data, so we exported it and put it into Excel, and then he was able to work with it. There was a few more options that Excel could do that Google Sheets still can't. Maybe it might catch up someday, but you may want to take this. You can go into File, you can download it as a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet, and then you can open it in Excel. If there's other kinds of sorting, other kinds of analytical stuff that you wanted, Excel can do that Google might not, then you can still just take that out and use it in Excel.
So if you were to print that and you wanted the title on the first line like you would usually have in Excel,
yep.
Does that free up your pointing to you open?
So if you had multiple pages, you can repeat the row headers. Yeah, that would be the title, like that would be that test form for Thursday. I'm just going to see if it gives us a preview of it. Yeah, so that's what it would look like if I wanted to print it. So. Oh yeah, yeah. But yeah, and if you're finding they're just it's not quite what you want it to do, and you can do it in Excel, then let Google do all the collection of your data, build your form, and then export it into Excel if you're more comfortable with the features of what Excel can do. But you can, yeah, you can do that here. Like so, if I select this column, wrap text is this button. Like this one overlaps onto the next. I can wrap text here. Same with this one.
Yeah, we have
So
paragraph
yes,
responses.
yes, yeah. Yeah, and then I can take these and I can drag, I can make this column bigger if I want to.
Or put
Yeah.
boxes around so that you can-
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, there is still, there, like really, Google Sheets has a lot of the same basic functions of what you probably would. Yesterday was the first day where we had to do it in Excel because what had happened was he did checkbox answers and the students picked the 3 people when I was talking about where they were voting basically for the 3 people they wanted to go to that meeting. Because he did it as one question and you could pick 3 options, it then said like Andrea, comma, Stacy, comma, Bev in this one line. And then it said Stacy, comma, Bev, comma, like but he wanted one name in one column, one name in another column, and then, since it was separated all by commas, we then exported it to Excel and told it, I think it was text to columns option, and it just instantly then recognized, you just say recognize the commas, and then it just pulled all the names into the 3 separate. We couldn't figure out how to do that in Google. Excel, it was super easy. So that was a reason why we had to switch it over. So, but if you're just searching, if you're just sorting, if you need to just wrap some text and just make it look a little bit nicer, you can just leave it in Google. There's no reason you need to probably put it into Excel. Okay, so yeah, and then you can just do whatever you need to with the data. If you wanted to share just the results, you can then go into the shared option. I had shared this whole folder, so that's why automatically it shared with George and my other account, and I think it might be, who's the other person? Oh, George's other Google account. So if you share just the resulting spreadsheet, all they can do anything with is the spreadsheet. They can't edit your original form. So it is the form and the spreadsheet are 2 separate entities. So you can then decide if you want to, which things you want to share, who you want to edit, who do you want to view it. You can decide, that's up to you. Okay, I think that is the majority of this. One other thing that I just want to show you quickly. So if you went in to create, you go into form, and you're like, well, I want to make a form. I know someone must have done a form. Maybe it's a room booking form, or it's a survey of how well did the session go, or I'm like, do I have to type all this in? I know someone must have probably asked these questions in a form somewhere in the world. Once you go in and you have to first go into the form. Then when you go to File and you go to New, there's this from Template. And you can do this from anything, a document, a spreadsheet. You don't have to do it just within the forms. But when you go from Template, it opens up to the Google. There aren't any, it's going to default to our old college templates. We haven't created any yet. But if you go to the public ones, let it load, and then it's showing everything in the template gallery. If I want to look for specifically a form, it should then is going to give me a bunch of different options, and maybe it's not so much the questions. Maybe you can look at this and say, oh, I really like this background. I don't have that theme to pick from in the themes that Google gave me, but I want to use this. I can then use this template, and then it just makes a copy of it and puts it in your drive for you. There's lots of different things. You're going to see there's some in different languages because it's from all over the world, but you can maybe search through this. You'll see there's all sorts of different things that are in here. So maybe you want to put, you were looking for a course evaluation form. I'm going to search for that. And there's some examples there for you. So it might be a place to start, especially when it's those grid ones that have lots of, like if you're like, what kinds of questions have people asked when they do an evaluation? You could maybe go into the template gallery, have a look. You can then edit it. You don't have to use it exactly the way. So let's say this one, I'm like, oh, this looks, let's have a preview, quick preview. Like, yeah, that looks pretty close to what I want. I'd maybe change the words a little bit. I'm going to use this template. It should then, it just loads, takes a copy of it. You will find that some of these forms, because Google Forms has updated, there may be some older versions, but you still can work on it. And now this basically has become a copy in my drive. I can click, I can change this around, I can delete questions if I want to, and it's only making changes to the copy that I've made. It isn't making changes to that person's original form. So this was called Student Course Evaluation. If I go back into my drive, there should be, there it is, copy of Student Course Evaluation System. It's right there. So now I own a copy of it. I can do whatever I want to it, and then I can send it out. So it's a good place to start, even if it's just to kind of get some ideas of how to ask questions, what kinds of questions do people use. You can then decide how much you want to use it and edit it as you like.
I don't work in forms at all. Is that what SurveyMonkey is?
It's very similar. So I think SurveyMonkey is just for doing surveys. So there are some tools and some functions. I think it's a little bit more advanced in some of the analytical things that you can do with it, tracking. When you send out, I think with SurveyMonkey, you send it to specific addresses, and only people with that address can answer your survey. Like, they have to do it within an email. You can't then forward it on to somebody else. Like a Google form, if I sent it to you, there's really nothing stopping you from sending it to somebody else, and then they could fill out the form, really. So there are some pros and cons. They all have kind of their strengths. And so if it's just kind of a simple, you just want to ask a few questions, get some data, put it in a spreadsheet, do whatever you need with it, Forms is probably the easiest. With SurveyMonkey, to get more of the advanced things, you usually have to have a license and pay for that. And so I think, and then FormStack has its pros and cons and benefits, and they're just all different companies, different software companies. So I don't think they talk to each other very well. But if you've been using one, like I think they use FormStack when you do a room booking. They're probably going to keep using it because they have it set up, and there really probably is no reason to switch to a Google Form. But if it seems to work, then you could just stick with Forms. But yeah, there are lots of other options out there for sure. Yeah. Okay. So that's the majority of what I wanted to show you today. You can take it one step further when you are in your spreadsheet. There is a thing you can do. There's these add-ons that you can add. And the one I just want to point out, it's this one called Flubaroo. That is if you ever wanted to use your form as like a quiz, where you wanted to mark people's answers and give them points if they answer it one way or another. So with Flubaroo, you would add this in. It's basically a tool you add into your spreadsheet. You then go in and do your form to give it the answers that would be like the right answers. Then you compare everybody else's answers against yours, and it would score them. So basically, if you need to build an online quiz for your students or for participants, you could do it through here, and it would give you a mark in the end. So we can help you with that if you want to ever use that, but it just kind of takes your form one step further and turns it into a quiz by using this Flubaroo add-on. But you don't need to add it in if you don't think you're ever going to use that. But I just wanted to point that out, and please give us a call if you ever need some. If you want to take it one step further and get some help with that, we can help you with walking you through it. And if there's anything that we talked about today and you're like, oh, she mentioned something about this, the recording will be on our ETC YouTube channel, but you can always Google it. You can always just go in, how do you change themes in a form? How do I send a form? How do I change the order of questions in a form? If you ever forget it, just go into Google, ask the question, and you'll get lots of help sites out there. Or you can contact any of us in the ETC department. We'll also help you out too. Okay, so 10 o'clock, just about right on the dot. So thank you for coming.